Good evening, everybody. My name is Ben. I'm an alcoholic. Man, that's a heck of an introduction. Before I came to Alcoholics Anonymous, nobody introduced me at all in any regard, except maybe on a court docket. I want to thank Richie for asking me to speak, man. It's an honor. It's an honor. I always get scared to speak. It's just, it's fascinating. I have one subject that I'm constantly consumed with, and it's me. And it's great because alcoholics like that, the big book tells us that, selfishness and self-centeredness is the root of all of my problems, and everything is about me. I make everything about me. My 6-step list will always have how personal I take life. You either did it at me or you didn't do it for me. And I'm consumed with self until you ask me to talk about myself in front of people. And then it's like, oh my God. And I sponsored a guy one time, and his sponsee, they tagged him to speak one night at Thursday night. And he was telling his sponsor, I don't know. I'm terrified. I don't know what to do. And my sponsee, his name was Gary. Gary looked at him and was like, you know about alcoholism. Shut up and get up there. So that's what I plan on doing, is telling you about alcoholism and how it's affected my life, and hopefully how Alcoholics Anonymous has affected my life. Couple of things. If you're new, I always try to say this. It's not like I speak a whole lot, but when I do speak, I like to throw this out there. When I first came to AA, the club, the Dry Harbor Club, we used to call it the Dry Humor Club or the Humorless Club. It was speaker meetings every Saturday, and when I first got sober, I didn't know what your guys' get down was, and so I thought that the people that spoke were maybe kind of, I don't know, in the upper echelon of Alcoholics Anonymous or something. And just to let you know, if you're here, that's not true. In fact, kind of what they do is they find the biggest ass clown that burned their life to the ground the most and can put syllables together, and they're like, give us some experience, strength, and hope, So yeah, I'm not in charge. Nobody's in charge. In fact, our traditions tell us we ought not be organized. And from what you were saying, it sounds like we're not. So, I was born, let me whip out my phone here to keep you guys hostage. I was born in the Deep South. I was born in South Carolina. I'm personally, and I have opinions, and I'll try to tell you when they're my opinions. There's this book, As Ben Sees It, and it's not a very good book. In fact, my wife would tell you steer clear from that book. But I have opinions, and if I have them, I will try to share those. My sponsor says you can argue with my opinions, you can't argue with my experience. So I'm going to try to keep it to my experience. That said, I think I was born with alcoholism. And what I mean by that was I just wasn't right out the gate. I didn't, the big book tells us in the doctor's opinion that we're restless, irritable, and discontented unless we can again experience the sense of ease and comfort which comes at once by taking a few drinks. And that's a bad deal for a little kid because I didn't know about the few drinks part. What I knew was I didn't have ease and comfort real early on. My dad was a Vietnam veteran, Vietnam combat veteran. He had gotten shot up in Vietnam. He grew up in tremendous poverty. I remember him telling me, one Thanksgiving they had mashed potatoes. He had a pet rooster named Ice Cream, and he came home from school one day, and his dad joked with him. He was like, well, do we have anything for dinner? And he was like, yeah, we're eating ice cream tonight. And it was this rooster, he was a sharecropper, literally. A lot of abuse, horrific abuse that he endured. And so, I'm still in therapy over that. But he did the best he could. It wasn't very good, but he did the best he could. But it was violent in my house, and it wasn't violent all the time. And it's taken me a long time and going to therapy and doing a lot of the work that we do here out of the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous to find out that it didn't have to be enough, a whole lot. It was enough. I never knew which dad was going to come home. Was it going to be happy dad? Was it going to be mean dad? Was it going to be, whatever? But the funny thing about my dad, like that side of the family is ate up with alcoholism. Like everybody's either been to prison or has been murdered or murdered someone or both, or, drug addiction, it's rampant. And my dad wasn't an alcoholic, I don't think. The jury's out. But this is what I noticed from an early age when I was a little kid, that when my dad drank, he got nice. It would like a pressure valve or something. And that stuck with me. And then also because there was so much alcoholism in my family, whenever anything bad happened, you drank. Whenever anything good happened, you drank. You took someone to the airport, you're so sad they left, you go to the airport bar and you drink. So I kind of remembered that, but I didn't have that, and I didn't have really even an interest in that. What I knew was just something wasn't right. Something wasn't right within me. And there was, there'd be crazy stuff happen in my house. Violent stuff happen in my house. I'd hear my parents, I would hear my parents fight, but it wasn't my parents fighting. It was my dad beating my mother. And I would hold my little brother, hold him tight because he was freaking out. And I was just like, oh, God damn, And I'd go downstairs the next morning and I'd see my mom sitting at the kitchen table with black eyes and that 1,000-yard stare. And I swore I was never, ever going to do that. I was never going to be that person. And I just wanted to check out, man. I just wanted to check out real early. And so what I did was I started finding things out here to try to fix me in here. And I started that journey really, really early. First, when I was a little kid, it was television. And I would watch TV and there was a syndication of the Mickey Mouse show. And I was like, that was like my higher power, really, Mickey Mouse. And I would watch Mickey Mouse and I would be enthralled in it. And then the show would end and they have that song, Mickey, and I would just burst into tears, and it was like my all hope is lost. And my mom would be like, sweetheart, if you don't, I can't let you watch TV if you're gonna do this every time the show ends. So I'd dial it back, but TV was a big thing. And then I found books, and I would read, and I was that kid. I would go to the library during the summer especially, and I'd come back with as many books as they would let me check out, and I would just read all the time. I'm like, I'll show you how to check out. It was just any way to get out of this and to get out of this. I was broken inside, and I didn't know it. And what happens for a guy like me, when I drink, the thought of drinking, even, after I found alcohol, it occurred to me that like one of the best feelings in the world is getting off of work and going to the bar. I haven't gotten to the bar yet, but I have a pocket full of money and I'm headed that way. And man, with every step, there's just another 10, 15, 20 PSI just got released out of my being. You know what I mean? And drinking started to solve problems after I started drinking. Drinking started to solve problems that I didn't even know I had. And when I was younger, I knew something wasn't right, but I didn't know that there was a solution to them just waiting for me in any convenience store. So I tried to grin and bear it. I did have a couple of experiences. My first experience, I had two experiences really early on with the allergy. And what I mean by that, if you're new, just hang around and hopefully this will start to make sense. But I didn't know this about myself. And the way we describe alcoholism in Alcoholics Anonymous is it's a 3-part disease. It's a mental obsession, a physical allergy, and a spiritual malady. And that's, what the hell are you people talking about, right? And the book, our big book, it starts off right out the gate, like right off the rip, starts talking about the allergy. And what the allergy is, and what they say is that I cannot safely drink. I cannot safely drink because what happens is something, after I take one drink, I'm going to take another one. I'm going to take another one. And then I'm going to keep on drinking. Because the only thing that's better than 4 is 6. The only thing that's better than 6 is 8. The only thing that's better than 8 is a line of cocaine so I can drink 15. And, that's the allergy. And the book starts off telling us about the allergy because a lot of times that's what we think alcoholism is. A lot of times that's what our family thinks alcoholism is. A lot of times that's what the criminal justice system thinks alcoholism is. Like, don't drink or I'm going to put you in prison. It's like, oh, hell yeah, I just won't drink. And if you've been through my program, I'm sorry, but I'm going to hit you with this again. I don't have a drinking problem. I have a probation problem. I don't have a drinking problem. I have you won't leave me the hell alone about my drinking problem. I have a getting caught drinking problem. And what happens is if I take that one drink, and I didn't see this, I didn't see this at all, I came into AA and people would say, these old crusty old timers, they would say, it's not the caboose that kills you. I'm like, what the hell are you talking about? You know what I mean? Like, and it wasn't until I've been around here for a while that I knew that's what they're talking about. It's not the caboose that kills you. It's the engine. It's the first drink. It's not the last one that puts me in jail or another country in another dress or whatever it is that happens. And so, like, if it was just the allergy, we'd be golden. We'd be fine. Because I just wouldn't drink. And I just don't drink, and I'll be okay. But what happens, the book goes on to say that the main problem with the alcoholic centers in his mind. And so, okay, I guess, whatever. But then it was pointed out, I was just telling you guys, like, pocket full of money on the way to the dope house, or pocket full of money on the way to Circle K or to Walgreens or wherever it is. And I'm already feeling better, like, oh, wait, there's something to that. And it goes on, and, we talk about the mental obsession, and the mental obsession, all that is, for me anyway, is I'm going to think about drinking. I'm going to think about getting loaded somehow. I'm going to end up getting loaded, whether I think it's a good idea, whether I think it's a bad idea, whether I'm not thinking at all. The book talks about strange mental blank spots where, like, I'll tell you how good it feels to be sober while I'm pulling on a 40. You know what I mean? What's underneath that, and, the real soul sickness stuff that we talk about, and it sounds really dramatic unless you've experienced it and have gotten relief from it, is this idea of the spiritual malady. And that sounds really dramatic. But it's explained to me that, really what it is I just don't feel good sober, really. Like, boom, just there it is. I don't feel good, or I don't feel good enough sober. And I had that idea of what people talk about, like the soul sickness and the God-shaped hole and all that. And I hated hearing that stuff, but it's true. And, at some point, I mean, like, that's real. That's like old school suffering, man. And what happened for me was I drank, and that went away. At some point in my drinking, I drank, and that idea of the spiritual malady went away. I was tall enough. I could dance. I really couldn't. Girls were hot. Girls were not hot. Didn't care. They were there. I was happy to be around them. If they weren't happy to be around me, I didn't care. That kind of stuff. I drink, and all that goes away. All this chatter. I've got like this ticker tape going in my mind all the time, and it's never telling me this barrage of good things. Never. Like, oh my God, it's such a beautiful day. Look at this view. And it's like, oh, you're going to get up there to the podium and you're going to bomb. You're going to pee your pants. It's just like, and it's always been that way. And for me, when I was younger, I drank, and it was like somebody flicked an off switch. And it was like, oh my God, this is amazing. My brain remembered that. My brain's like, okay, we're going to keep this one. But as my disease progresses, that physical allergy gets stronger and stronger and stronger. And then even if there's some point where I'm like, I don't want to drink, both my body and my mind are like, good luck. Yeah, okay, well, I tell you what, let's go to the bar and we'll talk about that. And that's where, we have this, it's like, it's a bad thing, man. Untreated alcoholism is a bad, bad thing. And when you look at it from that perspective, what I find out is, and this sounds goofy, if you're new, I swear, just stick around. But alcoholism has very little to do with drinking. Drinking has a lot to do with drinking, but alcoholism has very little to do with drinking. What happens is, and I didn't learn this until I came into the rooms and had people like you teach me this stuff. It made so much sense. What happens is I have this mental disorder and the spiritual sickness, and I take a drink and it goes away. I treat my alcoholism with a bottle of Thunderbird, and it's a fantastic solution for a long time. I'm not one of those cats. This is just me. First opinion. I don't have anything bad to say about booze and dope. I don't. I'm not one of those like, oh, it was always terrible, or booze is evil. Like, man, that shit saved my life. I love drinking. I love drugs. I'm a dabbler. I was telling my sponsor last night. I'm not like a hardcore anything. I'm a dabbler. I'll dabble in almost anything, especially if you bought it. I love your drugs. They're amazing. But what I need is that head change. You know what I mean? I need a head change. This is killing me. I heard there was this meeting we used to go to back in Flag that it shut down. It was a Monday night meeting, and we'd have a lot of tourists come through. And there was this good old boy from Texas, and I'll never forget this. He was traveling through, and he had found our meeting, and he was at this meeting, and he described alcoholism like this. He said, "If I ain't drinking, my head tries to chew itself off of my shoulders." And I'm like, that is the best description of alcoholism I have ever heard in my life. Like, and I can't, it's not like I can run away from it. I'm running, it's like, rah, 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 like I'm just like an idiot running into a tree because my brain is trying to chew itself off my shoulders. And so, what, my brain remembers that, and it's really, really impossible. Our book talks about, like, rarely has anybody beat this thing in single-handed combat. I mean, it just doesn't work. Because the calls are coming from inside the house. And my brain is going to go to a lot of trouble to tell me it's a good idea to drink. Because remember back then, girls didn't like you to drink, they did. Remember, you'd be all twisted up about your family violence, childhood, trauma, blah, blah, blah. You have a few drinks and it goes away. Remember that? Let's do that again. So I'm going to end up drinking whether I think it's a good idea or not, unless I come to places like this with people like you. But I had an experience now. That's all said. I had an experience, my first experience with the allergy. It's not a pretty one. I had a couple of experiences, kind of back to back. But the first one and the most embarrassing one that I'll treat you to, I was helping my dad work on the car, and he was finishing stuff up, and he had a 4-pack of Coors Tall Boys, and only the real can relate. I love Coors beer. I was so offended. I was genuinely offended the first time I drank a Coors Light. And I use that shit as profiling purposes now. Like, if I see somebody that likes Coors Light, I'm like, I don't like that guy. Sorry, like, no offense. I mean, that's just kind of my thing. But, and Miller High Life, too. That was another one. Like, Miller Lite, I had to, like, what the hell? What are you doing? Anyway, that old school with the X. Anybody drink the Miller 40s back in the day? It was before they even called them 40s. It was a quart of beer. Anyway, 32s. Yeah. We had been working on the car, and he finished, and he was like, go get 2 beers. And I was like, hell yeah. So I went and I got 2 beers, and we popped the top on them, and I drank that tall boy, and the magic happened. I had had a glass of wine at Thanksgiving when I was about 5. My dad let me hit a joint around his friends. I think they were laughing at the little stoned kid or whatever. But the magic had never happened. This time the magic happened. And it was like the big book talks about that AA is like an epoch in the annals of alcoholism. It's like, that sounds like a dirty joke. What does that mean? And And you know what an epoch is? It's like this huge, like things were one way before and now they're like this after. And that was an epoch in my alcoholism. I was one way and then I was another. And I had that beer and like it was warm going down and I had like the butterfly fairies singing in my ears, you know, all that thing that we talk about. And I went inside and we got the other beer. I don't even remember if we drank that one. I think we did. But while this is going on, acquaintance of my parents, she had been married to one of my dad's friends moons ago. We hadn't seen her in forever. Her name was Lois, and Lois showed up, and she was drunk as $700. I don't even know how she drove. She like came in sideways, you know what I mean, like coming in for the win. And she got out of the car, and she had a gallon of Carlo Rossi. And if you've never drank Carlo Rossi, I'm sorry. It's amazing. It's got the handle that you can flip back, you know what I mean? It's classy. It looks good. You're like you're in a spaghetti western or something. I don't know, or like Greek statue. But you can get a lot down in a short amount of time. But she came in and, you know, she was hammered. And she put that gallon of wine in the fridge, and she started to, like, subject herself to my poor mother, who, like, my mom is one of those people that, like, if somebody opens a bottle of wine around her and she gets too close to the cork, she's like, oh, my God, I'm dizzy. And, you know, she won't finish a glass of wine. It's like, oh, it makes me, I don't feel it. Or I start to feel lightheaded. And I'm like, Mom, you're not even in the parking lot. You got to keep drinking, like, to get into the, you know, the amusement park. You're oh my God. Anyway, so my poor mom, this classic Southern Belle woman, she's stuck with this obviously like shit-faced drunk woman. And I came in and, you know, I was running on that little bit of Coors Light, and the thought occurred to me that, like, hey, I bet I could have a little bit of that wine and everything would be all right. And so I kind of did I looked this way and I looked that way and I opened the fridge and I grabbed it and I instinctively knew the posture. I don't know how I knew that, but I did. I cracked it and I slug. I was drinking it like it was Kool-Aid because it looks like Kool-Aid. And I didn't even want to puke. I put it back in there, and then the magic really started to happen. It was like, man, if I thought I was feeling magic before, like now I'm a sorcerer. And so I went back outside and I started feeling it. And I was like, oh, you know what would make this better is to go hit that again. Because she's drunk. My dad's obviously left my mom to deal with this pile of hot garbage that's happening in our dining room. And so, you know, I was like, well, shit, I'll go do it again. And I went and I popped the fridge open and I went and hit it again. And basically, I drank about a half a gallon of wine in about 5 minutes. Little did I know, shades of things to come. But what happened was, I'm sure someone here has experienced something like this, but I got really, really drunk really, really fast. And this lady, she was about 65. I think I was 13 maybe. And my mom, in a desperate attempt to try to do anything, had busted out the Trivial Pursuit game and was trying to play Trivial Pursuit with this drunk woman while she choked back the resentment that she was feeling towards my dad, who was gone. You know, and so she's like, Ben, would you like, you know, please save me. Would you like to play Trivial Pursuit with us? And I'm like, well, yes, I would. And so we sat there and we're trying to play Trivial Pursuit and, you know, throwing dice and they go off the table, whatever. And as the booze rose to my head, as Bill W. talks about, I looked over and Lois, what I hadn't noticed before when she came in was Lois is actually, she's kind of pretty. And as we sat there, I noticed that Lois had noticed that, like, I'm kind of hot. And my mom has not noticed any of this because me and Lois are like on the same wavelength now, right? We're just kind of telecommunicating with one with another. And she's looking at me with, like, you know, that kind of like drooly smile, like, hey, big boy. And I'm looking at her like, hey, hot mama. And right there in front of my poor mother, and again, this is one of my opinions. It's not funny to people that aren't alcoholics and drug addicts, but I on some level, I gotta think that alcoholic blackouts are God's gift to the alcoholic. Because the last thing I remember was I had my hand on her shoulder as it started to slide down, and she looked at me dead in the eye with that look of aggression, and I went for it. I did it. I went for it right there, and then I blacked out. I was like, oh. The next thing I remember, it was bad. It's so disgusting. I still don't know what happened. I'm gonna hope it stopped there. I don't know. Thank God I got sober before cell phones and security cameras everywhere and all that stuff. But the next thing I remember is my dad dunking my head into the tub and asking me, and I heard my mom say, what's wrong with him? They were terrified. They had no idea what was going on. My mom was like, did he drink? And my dad said, no, he just had a beer. I only gave him a beer. And he's like plunging my head into cold water, and he's like, did you drink anything else? Did you drink anything else? And even in coming in and out of a blackout, I knew that I can't be honest about this. And I was like, no. And, I came to in the yard, in the deep south, they have these things called mosquitoes. They're about the size of the Silverado spare tire. And, I came to sleeping outside, and I felt like somebody had hit me with an axe handle, and I just kind of rolled over. I was on a lawn chair. I have no idea if my dad made me go out there, if I had thrown up on it. I don't know. I still don't know what happened. And, it was hot in the morning, and then the door opens, and Lois comes out. We had a very different interpersonal reaction at that point. She looked at me, I looked at her, and it was like, we'll never talk of this again. That was the allergy, and I didn't realize it until I came to AA. Like, I had that one beer, and one beer, like for any other person, they get that little smoky feeling, it's like pleasant. And man, I just got in the door, But I was really, really terrified of my dad. My dad was a pretty violent guy when he wanted to be. He knocked me around. He smacked me around. He punched me. Threatened to kill me, all that stuff. So I fear kind of sobered me up, and I wouldn't drink. But as I went forward, what I found was religion, and I found a religion, and I don't knock religion. I got nothing bad to say about the church most of the time. It's just not for me. But at the time, it was very powerful, and I had a moving spiritual experience in a Southern Baptist church. And I kind of went forward with that, and I didn't have that kind of soul sickness there for a hot minute. It worked for me, and it was really powerful, and so it kind of kept me out of scrapes. But as I was getting older, I was about 18, and my dad was like, well, what are you going to do? Because you can't live here anymore. And I was being fed spiritually, if you will, but I still had this awful feeling of like, I don't fit in. And I didn't realize it at the time, but it was kind of like restless, irritable, and discontented, like 100, because the church was like shaving the top off of that, but I still had it. And I was too stupid to go to school. And I'm a musician, and I had been playing music, but I wasn't good enough playing a band, and I don't really, nobody's gonna hire me. I don't have any skills, so I was like, well, I guess I'll join the military. And so we talked about that, and I stayed at home for a little while longer, and then finally I joined the Air Force. And I got nothing bad to say about the Air Force either. We kind of disagreed on a few things, me and the Air Force. The Air Force is fine, but I joined the Air Force, and a girl broke my heart. And somehow instinctively I knew from my childhood, when that happens, what you do is you go drink. And I had been away from my church, and it was just me and old unbridled alcoholism, untreated alcoholism, just swimming around up here. And then I got my heart broken, and I went and I bought a bottle of wine, and I immediately turned into a wino. I switched my church for my new Holy Trinity, which was Mad Dog, Thunderbird, and Night Train. And those are amazing higher powers. They're not real wine, I don't think, but it gets the job done for like $3, you know what I mean? Back in the day. And that's when things really started getting bad. I drank myself out of the Air Force. I killed myself is what happened. I had planned to take a week off to drink, and I had the leave planned, and then this other entity was like, no, you have to do this like thing, this like Air Force-y thing. And I was like, but yeah, but I got the week off. And they're like, yeah, but I don't care. You have to do this thing. So I was like, well, I'll show you. And I ate a bottle of antidepressants and drank a bottle of Crown Velvet and Black Velvet, and I died. They obviously found me, and they brought me back. And I ended up being in a mental institution for a while where I proceeded to find out how I could get loaded. Because again, booze is not my problem. Booze is my solution, and it's a great solution. And I was in this mental institution with two Jesuses, and they were kind of at war with each other. And one, my buddy Woody Jesus, Woody was like, I'm the real Jesus. You know that, right? And I'm like, hell yeah, Woody, it's all good. I'm hanging out and I'm crazy. I'm getting crazy, and I'm not crazy because of the other crazy that they have. I'm crazy from alcoholism. I'm crazy from untreated alcoholism. I burned my life to the ground for that shit, and I didn't have it anymore. So I figured out, I would get permission to walk around the hospital, and I walked around the hospital. And back in my day, Sonny, you used to be able to get all forms of ephedrine-based products just right on the shelf. And so they had Sudafed, and I bought all of their Sudafed boxes. Kind of, we're amazing how we can like smuggle stuff. You know what I mean? I work at the jail. Like, it's really impressive. I could smuggle a fifth in my waistband, and like, I don't know, it's just something about alcoholism. It just covers it up. I guess nobody thinks they're dumb enough to take a fifth into a movie theater. Anyway, so I smuggled all this Sudafed in, and I ate a few boxes of it, and I got spun out, and then I got really gross, and then I threw up, and then I ate more, and I don't like methamphetamine. I mean, if you have it, sure, let's do it, but I'm never going to buy that shit. But I did, and I got loaded, and things just kind of escalated from there. I got out of there. They figured out, all right, we need to get rid of this cat. So I got rid of a cat. I got out of the Air Force. I took a hostage. She was in love with me. And that was the only mistake she made. She was a bright light, and I proceeded to do everything I could to dim or shut that light out. And I'm not proud of it, and I won't go into detail. I was asking my sponsor about it today. Should I share about that from the podium? But I swear I would never be that guy. I would never be that guy and put somebody in that situation. I would never do that. And I turned into that guy. I turned into that guy several times. I got arrested for it a couple of times, and just hated myself. And one time I was in holding, and I was getting ready to go to court. I was wearing underwear that was ripped down the sides, and they were like, it was in the belly chains. They were going to take me in front of the judge like that. And I was, oh. And then right before there, I'm not making fun of her by any stretch of the means. She was a good Al-Anon. She was a good unrecovered Al-Anon, and she had brought me clothes. Got in front of the judge. Yes, Your Honor, I'll never do that again. I got in the car. We went in the parking lot. We cried. And I told her, I will never do that again. I'm never going to drink again, and I will never do that again. And I meant it. And as soon as we got to the apartment, we went upstairs. The apartment was laid out. The front door was here. The kitchen was right here. Our bedroom was around the corner. And I remembered I had a bottle under the sink in the kitchen. And I knelt down and I opened that bottle and I slammed it. And then I thought, I was never going to drink again. Alcoholism is more powerful than I am. Our first step talks about I'm powerless over alcohol. That's not a philosophical concept. I can't not drink. I'm one of those cats. I'm a pig when it comes to drugs and alcohol. I drink no matter what. I drink to solve the problems that I created by drinking, which makes no sense until I came here with you people, and you're like, oh yeah, let's grab a seat and get a cup of coffee. And I'm like, oh, okay. And so I kept going with that. And I ended up, she was smart and she finally left. And it was just me. And it was just me in the bottle. And, our book talks about, please, and if you haven't read the big book, if you're new, please read the big book and read it with someone that has done it. Read that book with somebody else. Because by its own, it's kind of dry. It's not, like what's all the weird old words, and it might not be, written the best and this, that, and the other. But that book explains our problem in detail. And it explains in detail, step by step, how we recover from alcoholism. We recover from this damn thing. It's a hopeless state of mind and body. And anytime you see that in the big book, it says, hopeless state of mind, the mental obsession, hopeless state of body, the physical allergy. I'm going to drink myself to death against my own interest. And that's the way I was going to go out. If it hadn't been for people like you and, I'll fast forward. What ended up happening, I got to where I had this great job and I lost the job. I was going to kill myself again, and things were just bad for a really long time. I lived in filth. I did still have an apartment, but I didn't have a bed. I had a mattress. I didn't have sheets. I had a sheet that was never on it. You guys ever seen that show Hoarders? That's what my house looked like, but it was booze bottles. And I was just living in filth, man. And I was just disgusting. And I was dying of alcoholism. And the scary thing had happened to me. For me, if I get scared, I drink. I'm not scared anymore. If I'm anxious, I drink and I'm not anxious anymore. If I'm depressed, I drink and I'm not depressed anymore. And what happened for me was I was drinking and those things didn't go away. They got worse. And that is a horrible, horrible place for me. Because it was like when I first started drinking, it was like I had this deal with alcohol of like, look, you can have access to everything here. You can have access to it. And alcohol's like, hell yeah, brother, I got you. But as my disease progresses, alcohol's like, well, I'm going to go ahead and take that one. I'm like, wait, okay, go. And then alcohol says, well, I'm going to take that one. And we're like, all right. And then it takes another one. And then it takes another one. And I start getting, I might get a little protesty about it, but alcohol's like, hey, man, I'm doing my job. You said I could do this. All right, cool. By the time I had nothing left, alcohol had stopped doing its job. And so I was going to kill myself. I didn't have any other recourse. I didn't know what to do. And I screwed up, y'all. And be careful if you're new. I said the prayer. I said, God, help me. I can't do this. I would wake up in the morning and I had drank more than I had meant to. And thank God I left a little bit, but it's just a little bit and it's not enough. And so I have to get well enough so I can get out of bed, so I can go do the thing that I got to do and drink something so I don't shake to death and see weird shit that nobody else can see. And so I would take that bottle and I would go sit in the tub and I would guard it very, very carefully, because if I puke it up, I've got some really crazy decisions I'm going to have to make. And I would sit there and I would not brush my teeth for a hot minute, and I would put that wine down my gullet and I would say that prayer, God, help me, I can't do this anymore. Help me, I can't do this anymore. And I would love to tell you that, the skies parted and a beautiful nurse came in and, patted my hiney with, powder puff and led me to the Betty Ford Clinic. But what happened was the U.S. Marshals showed up. And, they just opened the door, and I was like, oh my God, what? You can't do that. It was my probation officer. And my probation officer looked at me and she said, oh, good. I thought you were dead. And I was like, man, that's powerful. And then it occurred to me later on, I was like, if you thought I was dead, how come you didn't come 3 days earlier? What the hell is that about? Anyway, so, I ended up going to jail, man. And, while I was in jail, that was the first time when I thought, man, maybe it's the booze, maybe it's the dope. And I swear I would never drink again. And they did in the 90s, they used to have this kind of shock incarceration thing, and they had put me in prison for a month. And while I was in prison, another alcoholic had said that to me, you can't drink again, right? And I was like, who the hell are you? I'm out of here in 28 days. You're here for 10 years. What? But it stuck, and I was like, maybe it's the booze and dope. And so I left, and I was never going to drink again, and I was drunk at Chili's that night. I never was going to drink again, and I was drunk at Chili's that night. So I ended up going to rehab, and I was at rehab. And while I was at rehab, everything was doomed, and I knew I was going to die, and just, I guess I'll just not drink, and yay. And the rehab, anytime they had a young person, they had this graduate from the rehab, and these old timers, they were these old, scary, old AA broads. They would call themselves that. And they would make her come in on her day off to go like tell the poor bastard, like, look, your life's not over, it's just beginning. And she had just picked up a year sober, and she came and we're she's trying to convince me, like, look, don't hang yourself in the bathroom kind of thing. It's gonna get better. And she asked me, she was like, so, what's your sober date? And I said, April 10th. This is in 2000, April 10th. And she said, no, what's your sober date? And I said, it's April 10th. And she was like, no, sweetheart, that's my sober date. What's your sober date? And we found out we had the same sober date. And that woman became my best friend. And she helped me immensely as I started this process. And we were friends. And then somehow I started getting better, and I duped her into starting to date me. And now I have the girl. She said yes to me. And that was in 2003 that we got married, and I've been married to her ever since. And I've got the girl. Richard said, I've got the job. I've got all the things. You know what I have in my life right now? You know what I have? I have all the shit in my life that I said I wanted to have when I was sitting on a bar stool. That's the life that I have. And I didn't do that. I came in and I did the things that you guys told me to do, and I didn't do it great. I did it to the best of my ability. Our literature talks a lot about willingness, and I was willing. I didn't do it great. The only way to do this thing is you can't work the steps wrong if you're doing them with somebody else. Do it with somebody else. The only way is to do it wrong or to not do it, or do it by yourself. And I did this thing, and now my life is huge. And I know I'm running out of time here. I want to say one thing real quick. I was about 15 years sober, and I had it all, man. I had all the stuff that I wanted, and I started getting really dark. And I had struggled with this before throughout my sobriety, and my answer was like, go to more AA, sponsor another guy, take another commitment, whatever it is. It sounds like I'm Mr. AA. If you know me, I'm not. But that was how I dealt with it. And at around 15 years sober, that wasn't working. And things got really, really dark. And things got darker. And then things got even darker. And what I found out was in my mom's side of the family, late onset depression runs in our family. I was just telling Nan before the meeting, I have an aunt who's not a drug addict, not an alcoholic. She's a good old Southern belle, and she had to be institutionalized after she hit her early 50s for comatose depression. And so I was suffering from something that was not alcoholism, and I was trying to treat it with the treatment for alcoholism, and it wasn't working. And what would happen is I would sit down with the sponsee, and for that hour I'd be okay, but hour and 1 minute, and it was like, man, did you hear about Ben? That's what I was afraid was going to happen. And my wife was getting exasperated, and she was scared for me, and I was scared for me, and I couldn't hold it together. I would take the dogs out in the woods to go run with them, and I would fall apart, or I would keep it together. I'd come in, and she's like, how? And my wife would say, how was it? And I would just fall apart crying, and I didn't know what was going on with me. And so I had to start seeking outside help. And I just say that, that's my experience, but I've seen a lot of guys that won't do it, whether it's ego, whether it's like, oh no, AA is going to do it. And AA has fixed so much stuff in my life. Please don't misunderstand me. The power of Alcoholics Anonymous and the power of the 12 steps and the power of the fellowship is amazing, and it's immense. But it's not going to cure that. And thank God I had enough to know from coming to meetings and from talking to folks and from having good sponsorship, go where you need the solution. So ever since then, in 2015, I'm on meds, I go to therapy, I do outside stuff. And what I found is Alcoholics Anonymous might not fix that stuff, but it levels the playing field. And I implore you, if you have outside mental issues, treat them. But, and this is what I tell the guys that I sponsor, and I sponsor a couple of guys that have some of the similar journey, and I tell them, treat the alcoholism first. treat alcoholism first, because it likes to look like depression. It likes to look like trauma. It likes to look like a lot of things. Treat the alcoholism first and see what's left over. But for me, there was a lot left over, and I had to treat that. So I get to be here tonight. I get to be here with you people, you lovely people. You guys saved my life, man, whether you know it or not. The fellowship and the steps and the program of Alcoholics Anonymous saved my life, and for that I'm very, very thankful.